How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I am back in my normal setup. I finally got power last night. Somehow my internet is still working. The cables are still under trees, but the internet is still working somehow. So I'm trying to get this video up before Verizon comes here and has to rewire everything. So in today's video, we're going to be doing a 53-man roster prediction. This is my third rendition. I wanted to do one before the first preseason game and right after the first unofficial depth chart came out, so we start to get an idea of what that roster is looking like. And of course, a lot is going to change over the next 3 weeks, over these 3 preseason games, where we really start to see, the back end roster players making a name for themselves and potentially making this 53-man roster. So I wanted to get out this preliminary 53-man roster preseason edition. And if you do happen to be a new viewer here, I put out Packers content almost every single day. I've been putting out highlights and recaps for every training camp practice. I'll be going live during the preseason games, including this one this Friday, so be on the lookout for that live stream. Everything Green Bay Packers right here on this channel. So to stay in the loop, go down and click subscribe. I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate all the endless support I got yesterday when I uploaded a training camp highlight video in a completely different setting, a house where I had power, where this one yesterday did not have power, did not have internet. I was still blocked in on both ends of my road, and I couldn't even leave until yesterday. Still have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of trees down and a lot of property damage, but hey, I'm in this room. I got power. I'm making a Packers video. Before we get into today's video, I want to give a big shout out to DraftKings for sponsoring this video. Do you want to get in on fantasy action but are sick of roster management? This year, best ball on DraftKings is bigger than ever. Just draft your team once in a snake draft at the beginning of the season. Each week, you'll automatically rack up points from top scorers on your team. No roster management to worry about. To claim your $10 entry back offer and start playing best ball on DraftKings, head to DraftKings, sign up using my code BASARAPROD, that's BASARAPROD at DraftKings.com. Enter DraftKings Best Ball $10 million contest and draft your team today. Each week, you'll automatically rack up points from your top scorers. No ads, drops, trades, or I should have played him instead. You'll be able to enjoy the fantasy football action without having to manage your team. And the team with the most points at the end of the season will take home the $1 million top prize. So what are you waiting for? Head to the DraftKings app right now, sign up using my code BASARA, P-R-O-D, and start playing best ball today. Only on DraftKings with my code BASARAPROD, that's B-A-S-A-R-A-P-R-O-D on DraftKings. All right, so without further ado, let's dive into my third edition of my Green Bay Packers 53-man roster. And firstly, I wanted to go over a quick key. If a player is highlighted in blue, that means they're a rookie this year. If they're highlighted in orange, that means they're an undrafted free agent this year. And if they're highlighted in red, that means they're a street free agent this year. So let's start with quarterback. And this one's pretty obvious for me now that the Packers cut Danny Etling on Sunday. So we have Jordan Love, Sean Clifford, and I have Alex Magoo listed in green here because he won't be on the 53-man roster, but he'll be on the practice squad and he'll be able to be elevated on game days without counting towards the 53-man roster. So that's why I believe every single team in the NFL is going to carry 2 quarterbacks and not 3, unless they really value their third guy and don't want another team to have him, because you can just keep that third guy on the practice squad and he can be dressed on game day. So you can have 3 quarterbacks on your roster on game day without having to roster 3. So that's going to be the case here, in my opinion. Sean Clifford, in my eyes, kind of solidified himself as that number 2. I thought he did really nice on family night, and he has looked pretty good during training camp as well. He just shows a lot of experience for a rookie, a lot of poise. If any team loses their starting quarterback, they're not going to do too great. But with how the Packers offense is going to be ran under Jordan Love, if he were to miss a couple weeks, I feel like Sean Clifford could come in and, hold it down for a little bit. But I do believe Sean Clifford will be that number 2 quarterback. Alex Magoo, the third quarterback and the practice squad guy. So I have 2 quarterbacks officially on the 53-man roster. Moving over to running back, I have 3 running backs being kept on the roster. Obviously, we have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. The big question mark is that third running back. I'm a huge Tyler Goodson guy, and I think Tyler Goodson will make this roster. Now, the unofficial depth chart came out, and yes, it's unofficial, so you can only take so much out of it. Patrick Taylor is the third running back on the unofficial depth chart. I know the Packers really like him because of what he can bring to special teams, but the Packers have been doing a lot with Tyler Goodson this training camp. They've been putting him at slot, out wide, putting him as a motion man, kind of that Tyler Ervin role, kind of showing that the Packers really like him and his versatility and his ability as a running back. And I think he's also gotten some reps at punt return or kick return. I forget which one it was. So if he can offer some special teams capability as well, I think he's easily the number 3 running back. I just think he has a lot more potential than Lou Nichols and Patrick Taylor. I like him a lot better, and for a third running back, say if one of Aaron Jones or A.J. Dillon goes down, I feel like he could definitely fill in for either of those roles, especially the Aaron Jones role, because we know how much we use Aaron Jones as a wide receiver. So if Aaron Jones were to have, a 1 week, a 2 week injury, I feel like Tyler Goodson could come in and be that receiving type of back. Obviously, he's not as good as Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is unreal, but I do think he has a lot of potential. I love Tyler Goodson, and I think he's going to make this roster. So he's my third running back over Lou Nichols, over Patrick Taylor. Moving on to the tight end spot, this one's remained the same all 3 of my 53-man predictions, and that's the Packers keeping 4 tight ends. Rookies Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft, Josiah DeGuara, and Tyler Davis. Now, on the Packers' unofficial depth chart, they listed Josiah DeGuara as a fullback. So I guess you could list him as a running back on this prediction, and the Packers keep 4 running backs. And if they do that, maybe they keep another 4th tight end, someone like Austin Allen or another free agent that's on the street right now. But I don't think that's going to be the case because DeGuara can still play tight end. Like, he has a ton of versatility. So yeah, he might be listed as a fullback on the depth chart, but they could put him at inline tight end if they wanted to. Also, interestingly enough, on the unofficial depth chart, Tyler Davis is listed above Tucker Kraft. Now, I don't think this is going to be the case. I think Tucker Kraft is going to get way more offensive snaps than Tyler Davis, but I think it just shows the Packers' commitment to Tyler Davis, making this roster in terms of a depth tight end, and more importantly, a special teams guy. He was, I think, the second most snaps on special teams last year for the Green Bay Packers, so they really value him as a special teamer, so that's why I have him definitely making the roster, and one of the 4 tight ends with Musgrave, Kraft, DeGuara, and Davis. So excited to see both of these rookie tight ends tomorrow in a real action live game against the Bengals. Excited to see what Luke Musgrave can do against a live defense. Moving on to the wide receiver spot, this has changed every single time, and as it should. I'm always flip-flopping all around the place for wide receiver in my 53-man predictions. So Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Tay Wicks, and Samori Toure. Those have been the constant every time. Those 5 guys, I feel, are roster locks. They are making the roster. Where I've switched is early on I had Grant DeBose because it was my first 53-man prediction right after the draft. So they drafted him, thought he was going to be the 6th guy. He just started practicing this week. Then I switched to Malik Heath because he had such a hot OTA and minicamp, and he has continued that, but I believe Bo Melton has been better, and I believe he can also contribute more on special teams, so that's why he's my 6th wide receiver. Not to mention Bo Melton is listed as the 6th wide receiver on the unofficial depth chart. Another interesting note on the unofficial depth chart was that Samori Toure was listed over Jaden Reed at slot wide receiver. I feel like with these first preliminary unofficial depth charts, they kind of just list their veterans over rookies a lot of the time when that's not going to be the case in season. I love Samori Toure. I'm a huge Toure supporter. I think he's a great route runner. I think he has a lot of potential, but I still think Jaden Reed is slot number 1, and he's going to be the 3rd wide receiver in this offense. Day 1, week 1, they're going to be using him a lot in the slot as a motion guy, even out wide. He has a ton of versatility there out of the backfield. They've already done that in practice. Can't wait for that. So Jaden Reed's my wide receiver 3. Tay Wicks just returned to practice and still looking, very promising. A very solid route runner. Not the greatest top end type of speed, but awesome release package, foot in the ground, quick cut type of guy, just makes plays with the ball in his hand. So Tay Wicks definitely making the roster as a 5th round draft selection. I still have Samori Toure as a lock. I know some people don't, but I do. And Bo Melton as that 6th wide receiver. I think I've even kept 7 receivers on my first 53-man roster. And as of right now, if they were to keep 7, it's going to be Malik Heath. But I have a lot of talent on other positions I'm keeping that just doesn't allow me to keep 7 wide receivers. So Malik Heath and Grant DeBose will end up being practice squad guys in this rendition. Moving on to the offensive line, I separate it from tackle, guard to center just to make things easier. For tackle, I still have 4 tackles. I have David Bakhtiari, Yosh Nijman, Caleb Jones, Rasheed Walker. I had Luke Tenuta on it last time. I'm removing him for Rasheed Walker. The reason for that is on the depth chart, Walker is actually above Caleb Jones. He was a draft pick last year. He's looked good in camp so far. Caleb Jones has also looked great as well. I think both of these guys are solid backup tackles, and the Packers want to keep them on the roster. Luke Tenuta, has had his flashes in camp, but I just think they value Walker and Jones a little bit more. Now, if you're wondering where Zach Tom is, don't worry, we're going to get to that on the interior. Moving to guard, Elton Jenkins, John Runyon, Royce Newman, and Sean Ryan. Not really much to explain here. I feel like this is an obvious 4 to select. 2 starters, 2 backups. Elton Jenkins starting at left guard, John Runyon starting at right guard, Royce Newman is the backup at right guard, Sean Ryan is the the backup at left guard. Moving on to center, I have Zach Tom and Josh Myers. Now, Josh Myers is still technically starting at center, but Zach Tom has gotten plenty of snaps with the ones at center, and Josh Myers hasn't looked too great in training camp. There have been a lot of fumble snap exchanges, so it's definitely a problem, and the Packers are still exploring that avenue of maybe Zach Tom being the starting center and keeping Josh Nijman in at right tackle. That could definitely happen. So in that case, if Zach Tom's starting at center, Josh Myers is the backup center, you have no need for Jake Hansen. Right now they have Jake Hansen listed as center number 2, but that's without Zach Tom in the equation. So I don't have Jake Hansen making the roster. I just don't see the Packers keeping 11 linemen. They're usually right around that 9 to 10 mark. If they were to keep 11, it would be Jake Hansen in my opinion, but I just feel like with Zach Tom's versatility, even Elton Jenkins' versatility, there's no need to keep that kind of backup center role in Jake Hansen. If Zach Tom needs to play center, that's fine. Even if Elton Jenkins it needs to in a pinch, that's fine. So if Zach Tom starts at center, Josh Myers will be the backup, and there'll be no need for a third one. Now let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball, starting with defensive line. I have them keeping 5. This has remained the same on all my roster predictions as well. This one's pretty easy for me. There is like a slight stipulation that maybe could happen, but I have Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, TJ Slayton, rookies Colby Wooden, and Carl Brooks. Now, they could keep 6 here and go John Ford to have kind of a backup nose tackle type of guy if they really want that. But I think they're going to keep more edge guys, so they're only going to really be able to keep 5 defensive linemen here. Colby Wooden has looked pretty good in camp, has made some pressures, some good run stops. Carl Brooks has looked excellent and like a draft steal for the 6th round, and I've been saying it all draft process before the Packers drafted him. I want Carl Brooks. This dude just simply produced at Bowling Green. I mean, his pressures, his tackles for loss, his sacks, just off the charts. And yeah, the competition was lower. I don't care. Carl Brooks was very good in college, and I am super excited that the Packers got him in the 6th round. I had like a 3rd or 4th round grade on him just due to how good this guy was in college, and he's been showing that in training camp, making a ton of pressures, winning 1v1s, making run stops in the backfield. He's looking like a real solid piece, and he's going to be a nice depth lineman for the Packers on this defensive line. Colby Wooden as well. These two guys are going to rotate in a lot this year with the loss of Dean Lowry and Jerron Reed, and not to mention someone like Lucas Van Ness could also move inside if they need him as well. So defensive line's pretty easy for me. I'm not including John Ford. I think the Packers will be comfortable with these 5 guys. So moving on to edge, this one's hard. I mean, I've had them keep 5 for a while because Rashawn Gary I had opening on PUP, but that's not the case anymore. Rashawn Gary started practicing a couple days ago, and he's looked way ahead of schedule. Started practicing 9 months and 1 day after his torn ACL, which is unreal, and he looks great. So I see him remaining on the active roster and not being placed on the PUP or IR or whatever it have be to start the season, and being active week 1. Now, what that will be, what that will entail, not exactly sure. Will it be his normal 65% of snaps? I highly doubt it. Will it be somewhere around 25 to 30%? That's where I'm guessing against the Bears week 1, but we'll see what happens. There's still a lot more, training camp to go. Obviously, I don't see him playing in any preseason games. That would just be foolish. But we have Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Kingsley Enagbare, Lucas Van Ness, Justin Hollins, and Brenton Cox Jr. So I have the Packers keeping 6 edges. I don't know the last time they've done that. They've kept 5 a couple years ago, I believe, maybe even last year. They've kept 4 before, but I just have them keeping 6 because I feel Brenton Cox Jr. is too valuable to have him pass through waivers. Like, I don't think he'll clear waivers and be able to be put on the practice squad. And I think it's a bad idea to just let that guy go. Not to mention, if Rashawn Gary is on a pitch count, he's not going to be full 100% week 1, I don't think. So the Packers are going to need extra bodies in that edge room. So they kind of maybe are looking at as, okay, maybe we're keeping 5 plus whatever Rashawn Gary's at. So that's the way I'm looking at it, not fully 6 edge guys, but to me, it's Justin Hollins as a lock, Kingsley Enagbare, Lucas Van Ness. Obviously, both of those guys are locks as well. Lucas Van Ness has looked terrific in training camp so far, and I believe he's listed above Enagbare on the depth chart right now. But I just can't get rid of Brenton Cox Jr. He's looked good in training camp. He has a ton of potential, and he will not pass through waivers, in my opinion. So that's why I'm keeping 6 edges here. Switching to inside linebacker, this one has also stayed the same for me. All of my predictions: Devondre Campbell, Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie. Those 3 are obvious. Those 3 are going to make the roster. Where it can differ is the 4th guy. I have Eric Wilson because he was the best Packers special teamer. I think he was the 2nd best special teamer in the NFL in regards to PFF grade. So the Packers are going to want to retain that. And I know some people might go, what about Tariq Carpenter? And in family night, he had 2 interceptions, and he switched to linebacker and he's looking better. I just think Eric Wilson offers a lot more on special teams, and that's what that 4th linebacker is. Now, the safety is a stacked room, so I don't think Tariq Carpenter fits there either, and he's just going to be a practice squad guy. He was a 7th round pick last year. It's not that big of a deal. Eric Wilson is a true linebacker, offers more on special teams. He's my number 4. Moving to cornerback, we have Jair Alexander, Rasul Douglas, Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine, and Corey Ballantyne. I see a lot of comments of people saying, I didn't realize there was a Valentine and a Ballantyne. It's wild to have 2 guys at cornerback with such similar names like that, but both are going to make the roster for me. I have Shamar Jean-Charles and Ennis Gaines not making it. Jean-Charles is listed behind both of those guys. Ennis Gaines is listed as the backup slot, so he very well could sneak in here for Corey Ballantyne, depending on how much they value his versatility, which it seems like the Packers do like Ennis Gaines' versatility. So I was about to put Gaines over Ballantyne here because Ballantyne has kind of been struggling lately at cornerback, but he's very valuable in special teams as a gunner. He's been starting at gunner, so that's why I have him on the roster. Carrington Valentine has looked excellent as a 7th round rookie. He's had pick 6s in practice. He's been starting with the ones all this week ahead of our preseason game because I think the Packers aren't going to play Jair and Rasul, maybe even Keyshawn, so they want Valentine to start getting snaps with the ones to get more in that groove. He's going to get a ton of action during preseason, and the Packers really like him. He's cornerback 4 right now. Now, if you notice Eric Stokes isn't on this list, we'll get to that in a little bit. Moving to safety, I have them keeping 5 here. Rudy Ford, Darnell Savage, Tarvarius Moore, John Owens, and Anthony Johnson Jr. Now, some people might say Anthony Johnson Jr. might not make the roster for someone like Donald Levitt. I have Donald Levitt off the roster because I prioritize Ballantyne, Eric Wilson, those type of guys that can play special teams. So I want to prioritize the potential of a safety here in Anthony Johnson Jr. A nice run support, downhill safety, looked really good at college at Iowa State there. Really liked Anthony Johnson Jr. And then John Owens and Tarvarius Moore have been getting snaps with the ones, both of them. The Packers have been rotating the 4 front guys, Ford, Savage, Moore, and Owens a lot since the pads came on. So those 2 guys are locks for me. They're street free agents. They signed them in the offseason. They like their veteran presence, the rotational depth there at safety, and either one of those or both of those guys could end up starting at some point this year at safety. So those 4 locks, it just really differs at that 5th safety spot. I think it's going to be Anthony Johnson Jr., but I really wouldn't be shocked if he ends up getting cut, put to the practice squad, and they keep Donald Levitt just based off of it. Rich Basaraski guy, special teamer. It's just not really a safety. I don't want him back there at safety, where I honestly would feel more comfortable with Anthony Johnson Jr. back at safety. Now, quickly to go over special teams, this has also remained the same. Anders Carlson at kicker. He's looked a lot better recently. He kind of struggled early on, but he's looked a lot better recently. Pat O'Donnell is the punter. Now, I was very tempted to put Daniel Whelan here. He's been booming some punts in training camp. Would be the first Irishman to make a 53-man roster since 1985. But I think the Packers love the veteran, Pat O'Donnell at punter here. But honestly, I wouldn't be too shocked if they ended up going younger, cutting a little bit of cost with Pat O'Donnell's contract and just running with Daniel Whelan on a very young team to begin with. I think Pat O'Donnell is the oldest player on this team. So I could very well see them doing that. I'm going to keep Pat O'Donnell just because I feel like if I'm a betting man, he's going to be punter, but I could see them going Daniel Whelan. And as for long snapper, Matt Orzak, he's listed as the first long snapper on the depth chart. They signed him this offseason as a street free agent. So as long as it's better than it has been in years past, I'm cool with whoever's at long snapper there. Then to wrap things up, as I mentioned, Eric Stokes, he's the only player I have on here starting on the PUP. He's still on the PUP. Who knows if they're even going to take him off of it any bit of training camp. It doesn't look like they will. So my best guess is he starts the year on PUP and he misses the first 4 games. And that's fine because I think the cornerback depth is fine with Ballantyne, and all of those guys for outside corner. And then, of course, once week 5 rolls around, they're going to have to decide who to cut in order to bring Eric Stokes on the roster. But I do believe he starts the year on PUP. So that's my third rendition of the Green Bay Packers 53-man roster prediction 1 day before their first preseason game tomorrow against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. So excited to see this new team finally in live action. Jordan Love looks like he's going to get a few drives, which is awesome. A lot of the veteran starters likely won't play, but nonetheless, this is such a young team. We're going to be analyzing so much talent on this team throughout these 3 preseason games. Again, I'll be streaming tomorrow. I'm starting on my YouTube channel, then directly after the game, I'll be moving over to Bleacher Report to give my post-game live stream there. So be on the lookout for that. But that about does it for this video. I appreciate you watching. Leave a like down below if you enjoyed it. I'll catch you on the next one, and as always, go Pack Go.